The following podcast is part of the MindBodySpirit.fm podcast network.
At Sierra, discover top workout gear at incredible prices, which might lead to another discovery. Your headphones haven't been connected this whole time. Awkward. Discover top brands at unexpectedly low prices. Sierra, let's get moving.
Raise the rudder! Raise the sails! Raise the sails!
Captain, an unidentified ship is approaching. Over.
Roger. Wait, is that an enterprise sales solution?
Reach sales professionals, not professional sailors. With LinkedIn ads, you can target the right people by industry, job title, and more. Start converting your B2B audience today. Spend $250 on your first campaign and get a free $250 credit for the next one. Get started today at linkedin.com/campaign. Terms and conditions apply.
Welcome. Welcome to our award-winning podcast, Mental Health, Hope, and Recovery. I'm Helen Sneed.
And I'm Valerie Milburn.
We both have fought and overcome severe chronic mental illnesses. Our podcast offers a unique approach to mental health conditions. We provide practical skills, guest experts, and inspirational true stories of recovery. Our knowledge is up close and personal.
Helen and I are your peers. We're not doctors, therapists, or social workers. We're not professionals, but we are experts. We are experts in our own lived experience with multiple mental health diagnoses and symptoms. Please join us on our journey.
We live in recovery. So can you.
This podcast does not provide medical advice. The information presented is not intended to be a substitute for or relied upon as medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. The podcast is for informational purposes only. Always seek the advice of your physician or other qualified providers for any health-related questions you may have. Welcome to episode 56, The Rough Road of Bipolar Disorder, One Woman's Journey. This is our third episode on bipolar disorder, and this time it's a first-person perspective. When I read our guest's insightful, relatable description of her first manic episode, I knew her perspective was one we needed to share with you, our listeners. Her journey is an excellent addition to our previous explorations into bipolar disorder. The illness is so complex and powerful that we have devoted 2 previous episodes to the subject. Our first look at bipolar disorder is episode 24, which features psychiatrist Dr. Stephen Strakowski, who is a national leader in treatment and research of bipolar disorder. Our conversation with Dr. Strakowski explores misdiagnoses and misconceptions of bipolar disorder, symptoms, treatment methods, the co-occurrence of bipolar disorder and substance use disorder, and the latest research.
Episode 27 is an in-depth follow-up to the rich conversation we had with Dr. Strakowski. We explore bipolar depression, often overlooked even though it's as debilitating and dangerous as manic episodes. Also, the co-occurrence of bipolar disorder with other mental health disorders, genetics, and treatments. These 2 episodes are wide-reaching resources for learning about all aspects of bipolar disorder. Now, as many of our listeners know, Valerie, you and I both have had our long years of struggle with bipolar disorder. So that's one reason why we're so excited to have a candid discussion with our special guest today. Now, another main reason is the many requests we receive from listeners for first-hand stories from people who fought and recovered from mental health challenges. It's just so uplifting. So today we offer the unique opportunity to hear one woman's story of her amazing battle and victory over this fierce mental illness. Valerie, please introduce us.
I'm delighted to. I want to welcome Patricia Wenzel. Patricia is a mental health advocate, a writer, artist, and parent. After 40 years of struggle with bipolar I disorder, she now lives in recovery. Patricia works for the National Alliance on Mental Health, our friend NAMI, And she lives in Sacramento, California, running the helpline and facilitating support groups for NAMI. Patricia also sits on the Mental Health Board and a few other state and local committees dealing with behavioral health. Patricia's newest endeavor is on Substack, and it is wonderfully titled Disordered Chronicles. It's a newsletter about the field of behavioral health with an emphasis on the topic of serious mental illness. Now, I've read all but this morning's post since its launch last month, and I'll just say, go to Substack, find Disordered Chronicles, read it. It's great. And now let's welcome Patricia Wenzel to Mental Health, Hope, and Recovery.
Good morning. Nice to meet you both. I'm glad to be here.
We're so glad to have you.
Yeah, we're delighted.
Let's just jump right in with the first question. Patricia, you have fought, as I just said, a long battle to recover from bipolar disorder. Please tell us about your journey, when it began, and major turning points along the way.
Sure. Well, when I was in community college, which was quite some time ago, 1974, I had a manic episode that ended in a psychotic break and suicide attempt. I had no insight into the fact that I was having a bipolar episode. It passed quickly in just a matter of a couple of days, and I managed to survive my attempt without anyone realizing I had made an attempt. So I went back to school and behaved as if nothing had happened. Over the next few years, I had episodes of depression and hypomania, but no repeat of my psychotic episode. So it was easy to pretend there was nothing wrong. But when I became pretty depressed in 1991, I went to a psychiatrist for the first time, and he diagnosed me with depression and started me on an antidepressant. As many of you probably know, that was probably not the best thing to put me on because it sent me into a psychotic mixed state again. I didn't go back to the psychiatrist or go to the hospital. I just set myself to endure as best I could. That's when I discovered that binge eating helped me cope. After I recovered from that episode, I didn't have another one for 14 years when a medical doctor started me on prednisone. I slipped into a happy manic daze, but that didn't last. And when I became suicidal, I entered an intensive outpatient program for the first time. At the end of several weeks of treatment, I was diagnosed with bipolar disorder, but I was convinced it was just the prednisone and stopped treatment soon after I was released. But I wasn't well, and I experienced more and more episodes, and they became more and more severe until I ended up hospitalized in 2011. I was hospitalized a lot over the next few years, but that entire time, I didn't tell anyone about my religious delusion. Finally, I confessed to a new psychiatrist that I believed I was evil, and he put me in the ICU at the psychiatric hospital. That hospitalization was when we finally found a combination of medications that worked. I've had a couple of hospitalizations since then for med changes, but I've been stable now for about 8 years.
Well, that's remarkable. So you were misdiagnosed before you got the right diagnosis?
Yes, that's correct.
Did you get any other misdiagnosis along the way before you got to the right one?
Well, yes. One of the things that I was misdiagnosed with was borderline personality disorder. Since my bipolar episodes come and go very fast, when I finally got to the point where I was in the ICU, I was having a complete bipolar cycle every day or even more often than once a day. And earlier I would go maybe 2 or 3 days. And so it was, it wasn't borderline personality disorder. And I think if they had done a more thorough questioning, they would have figured that out. But also I was working pretty hard to hide the fact that I thought I might be bipolar, that I might have bipolar disorder, which is, I think, a really common experience for people. It's like, oh no, I'm just having a really good day when really you're hypomanic. And, but the idea of having a diagnosis like bipolar disorder is very disturbing and very hard to accept at first. Yeah,
I wanted to ask you about that. You obviously it's pretty sobering to be told that you have a serious mental illness. But how long did it take you to sort of accept the fact that this was true about you and you were going to have to deal with it?
Well, there were some ways in which I didn't accept it for many years, even though I had a diagnosis in 2005 of bipolar disorder, which was handed to me in the form of a diagnosis written on a discharge summary. I wasn't told I had bipolar disorder. I wasn't given any information about bipolar disorder. I was just handed a discharge summary that said bipolar disorder for the diagnosis. And I was like, my heart stopped and I felt like, oh my gosh, I'll never be able to hold a job or drive my car and I'll lose my kids. I had this very negative reaction to that. And I was like, no, it's just that I was on prednisone and it made me ill, right? So for the next several years, I struggled and I finally went to a psychiatrist, not really thinking I had bipolar disorder, thinking I had some kind of weird depression, because it's okay to be depressed, right? Everybody gets depressed.
Yeah.
Everybody has anxiety. Everybody gets depressed. We don't, in our country, we discount those illnesses or those symptoms as something that everybody has, but that's not true for major depression, for the kind of depression that you get often with bipolar disorder. That is not the kind of depression that people talk about when they say, oh yeah, I feel depressed today. And so, but it was easy to say, oh yeah, I'm just depressed, but I'm, kind of have these weird other symptoms. And it took probably 2 or 3 years after I started seeing a psychiatrist again before I really went, okay, really, I have bipolar disorder. And then I didn't, because of the psychosis, part of my psychosis was that I had to keep it a secret. Mm-hmm. And a lot of people who have psychosis tell everybody, right? Oh, the CIA is watching me. Well, my psychosis was one where I felt like I had to keep it a secret. And I did keep it a secret for 40 years. And it wasn't until I was terribly, terribly ill that I finally told a psychiatrist, because I knew I was going to die. I was going to kill myself if I didn't tell someone, because I believed I was evil and I needed to kill myself because I was evil. And I was an evil influence in the world, and that my children would suffer because of me being their parent. And so in some ways, accepting the fullness of my diagnosis and symptoms didn't happen until, I had been hospitalized several times.
Well, Helen and I can relate to that. And finding out about your diagnosis the way you did would definitely make it harder to accept. But I know that you eventually did, because you so skillfully communicate what a manic episode is like, that I know you wouldn't be able to do that without full acceptance. And so if you can talk a little bit about what a manic episode is like, I think that would be very helpful. And what are those symptoms you experience? And can you talk about how maybe they changed over time after you tell us about the symptoms of a manic episode for you? Sure,
I can try and do that. So for me, mania starts out as a deliciously happy feeling. Who wouldn't want to feel that way, right?
Right.
I tend to talk fast and walk fast. I go into high gear when it comes to art projects or cleaning the house. I once made more than 20 felted vessels in 3 days when I was manic. I don't sleep, or I sleep an hour or two. I eat a lot and I eat really fast, much faster than normal. And I'm likely to spend money I don't really have on things I don't really need. Fortunately, my episodes of mania were usually brief, lasting only a few days, and I didn't become psychotic every time. When my mania shifted into a mixed mood, which is when I would get psychotic and believe that I was evil and needed to kill myself, then my symptoms changed and I became very distraught is the word I would use. And feel very very ashamed, a lot of shame and a lot of guilt. And just like I've said already, this impulse to kill myself would take over. Over the years, I've gradually developed better awareness of when an episode is starting and more insight into my symptoms, because when I first started having them, I had no insight into my symptoms. My first episode, I had no clue that I was anything other than just my in that moment experience. I didn't see it as abnormal. I didn't see it as psychosis. I just experienced it. And afterwards, I dismissed it. And gradually, my ability to recognize and understand that I was having symptoms of a mental illness grew until now. I have come to really understand the depth and breadth of the kind of symptoms that I can have and what that looks like.
Well, that to me is kind of the whole key to recovery, is learning to, I guess, monitor it within yourself and not completely succumb to it. Do you know what I mean? And
yes.
So that's a long trip though to get there, or it was for me. I have a question. In your experience, what are the differences between a manic episode on one hand and then the bipolar depression, which is so it can just be so deadening? And was one more difficult for you to overcome? And did they change or sort of morph over time, or did they remain the same degree of severity?
Well, over time, my illness became pretty severe, and I developed the ultradian cycling that I've mentioned, where I was cycling every day. I would go through a full cycle of bipolar symptoms that I would start out manic, and then I'd develop a mixed mood when I had the energy of mania, but believed I should kill myself. And then that would give way to a profound depression where I would become listless and unresponsive. And finally, I would become terribly anxious, having panic attacks before experiencing a short period of being normal before it all started again. It's very unusual to have clear-cut cycling that happens that quickly. So the manic is about energy and impulsivity for me. I get it intensely busy in whatever arena it happens to show up in my life. Might be art, might be house cleaning, might be once I was charting my moods, which is something I recommend to people to do, especially early in their illness. And I was hypomanic at the time, and I made a chart for my psychiatrist in Excel. And I was tracking like 16 different things, and I color coded all of it. Mm-hmm. And when I showed it to her, it looked like someone had spilled confetti on the page. Mm-hmm. And she was like, maybe just track a couple of things. So
I even track my moods manically. I've tracked my manic moods manically. Yes.
Yes. So, but the depression, oh my gosh, not being able to get out of bed, literally feeling like your limbs feel like they're made of lead and your head is a bucket of buckshot on the pillow, and just kind of a deadened feeling of some shame, but a lot of just, I don't know, almost nothingness. Like the world has no attraction. You don't want to go outside. You don't want to talk to other people. You're just silent and slow and profoundly depressed. And I fortunately haven't been that way very often. But when I am, it feels very hard to get out of that. I mean, the mania, the only way I know to get out of mania is with medication. But depression is not nearly as it's not nearly as easy to treat depression with medications, I think, as it is to treat mania with medications. So in my experience, you kind of have to live through it and wait it out and do the things you can do to help yourself.
So you find the depression more difficult to overcome?
I would say yes.
Eczema isn't always obvious, but it's real. And so is the relief from Ebglyss. After an initial dosing phase, about 4 in 10 people taking Ebglyss achieved itch relief and clear or almost clear skin at 16 weeks. And most of those people maintain skin that's still more clear at 1 year with monthly dosing.
Ebglyss, lebrikizumab LBKZ, a 250 milligram per 2 milliliter injection, is a prescription medicine used to treat adults and children 12 years of age and older who weigh at least 88 pounds or 40 kilograms with moderate to severe eczema, also called atopic dermatitis, that is not well controlled with prescription therapies used on the skin or topicals, or who cannot use topical therapies. Ebglyss can be used with or without topical corticosteroids. Don't use if you're allergic to Ebglyss. Allergic reactions can occur that can be severe. Eye problems can occur. Tell your doctor if you have new or worsening eye problems. You should not receive a live vaccine when treated with Ebglyss. Before starting Ebglyss, tell your doctor if you have a parasitic infection.
Searching for real relief? Ask your doctor about Ebglyss and visit ebglyss.lilly.com or call 1-800-LILY-RX or 1-800-545-5979.
When did making plans get this complicated? It's time to streamline with WhatsApp, the secure messaging app that brings the whole group together. Use polls to settle dinner plans. Send event invites and pin messages so no one forgets Mom's 60th. And never miss a meme or milestone. All protected with end-to-end encryption. It's time for WhatsApp. Message privately with everyone. Learn more at whatsapp.com.
Routine. Adjective. Used to describe an individual whose spirit is unyielding, unconstrained, one who navigates life on their own terms, effortlessly. They do not always show up on time, but when they arrive, you notice an individual confident in their contradictions. They know the rules but behave as if they do not exist. Routine, the new fragrance by Miu Miu, defined by you.
So, Patricia, what treatment methods helped you overcome the symptoms and the impact that the illness had on your entire life, I'm sure? Therapy, medications, skills training, self-care such as sleep and exercise. What helped you most?
Well, all of that helped me. I would not be sane without medications. I would not be as sane without therapy. In terms of the physical recovery from a period of multiple hospitalizations that ended in a psychiatric ICU and nearly unable to function physically, sleep was a key to my recovery. When I got out of the hospital, I couldn't read or write or drive or even cross the street. So I was profoundly impaired, and I slept many hours at night and napped frequently during the day. I still need more sleep than I used to, and I get a headache when I've been concentrating too long that will only go away after a long nap. So sleep really seemed to me to help rewire my brain, and I can't emphasize enough how important it was to my recovery. That and time. It took me a good 6 years to feel like my brain had come back as much as it was going to. There are still a few things that are harder than they were, but I'm back 95%.
That's so good to hear.
That's quite a statement, I think.
Yeah.
To have retrieved virtually all of yourself, sort of out of the hands of this pernicious illness. It's really amazing.
Yeah, and it's good to hear someone say, things were hard, I stuck with it, and I'm back. And to accept, I know for me, I had to accept I am not at all the person that I was, but I'm very happy with the person I am. It's not the same, but I'm happy now, and I accept that I have limitations, but I'm okay with what they are because I'm well.
Yeah.
Patricia, I have oh, sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I have a medication-induced tremor that meant I had to stop doing some of the artwork that I used to do, like sculpting and handwork. And that was hard to accept at first. But, the trade-off is my sanity. So I live with it. It's gotten better, a little bit better over time, but it's just one of those things that I've learned to live with and accept because it means that I can be stable and sane.
Right.
And I also want to say that, I live with white privilege and middle-class privilege. And without that, it would have been much harder for me to recover because I had the luxury of being able to just sleep when I needed to sleep and to have enough food on the table and have a roof over my head that I didn't have to worry about whether it was going to be there next month. So I also want to attribute part of the quality of my recovery to that.
Yeah, we're very aware of that it's how fortunate and blessed we are to have, if you have to have these horrible illnesses, to have the certain conditions of life that I know in my case, as you say, gave me many added advantages.
Right.
And it's something that I can feel a great deal of guilt about a lot of the time. I just have a quick question about medication. Mm-hmm. With so many friends of mine who are bipolar, they reach a point where they feel good and they drop the medication. Do you know what I'm talking about? I'm sure you've got friends that do that too. Did you ever have that temptation, or do you just, because I'm so happy to hear you say that you really need it and it works.
Well, my doctor told my family that I could die if I didn't get better. And because my brain was really so profoundly impaired by the severity of my illness. And when you have that kind of illness, I think it helps make it much easier to say, oh, I need this medication and I'm going to stay on it. I have occasionally, but not often and not for long, thought, maybe it might be nice not to have to take this handful of pills every night.
Yeah.
But that doesn't last for long because I stable, but it's really only in the last couple of years, even really the last year, that I've really come to grips with just how sick I was with the fact that I had psychosis, and that understanding and realization has really solidified for me the fact that I would not have the life I have if I wasn't taking my meds every day. Mm-hmm. And so that's made it easier for me. But I understand some people, especially younger people, who are like, oh, this only happened once and it'll never happen to me again, and I'm fine now. They quit because they think everything's fine. And sometimes you can go a long time before you have another episode. But when you have another episode, it could land you in jail or in the hospital. It could destroy your life in such powerful and destructive ways that, I tell people all the time, I post regularly on the bipolar Reddit, which has like 200,000 people on it. And I'm like, stay on your meds, stay on your meds, please stay on your meds.
Yeah.
Well, I just want to say one other thing, and that is that I so appreciate your being so open about the psychosis, because I, again, have had a number of friends who had the same issues, and they didn't want to admit it to anybody. And then that means it's hard to kind of reach an understanding about it. And so I just want to thank you for being so generous with something that a lot of people are just afraid to even confess to.
Yeah.
Well, there's so much stigma. We sort of have this pyramid, right, where on the bottom it's okay to be depressed and anxious, but you're really crazy when you're psychotic. It's like everybody understands that psychosis equals being crazy. And so there's just tremendous resistance to seeing it as something that can be dealt with and that doesn't have to destroy your life. And that it shouldn't have the kind of stigma that it has. But I was lucky my psychosis was limited. It happened only during certain parts of my cycle. It went away when I wasn't in that part of my cycle. And that's really different from people who have like schizophrenia and have chronic ongoing psychosis that they have to cope with. So yes, I had psychosis, but I was really fortunate not to have the kind of psychosis that really took over my life in a daily kind of way.
Well, talking about it, it leads me to the next thing I wanted to ask you about, and that's connection. In fact, also, we were talking a minute ago about the privileges we have, and one of the things Helen and I are always so grateful for is the amount of connection we have in our lives. And in fact, I'm doing today's mindfulness exercise on connection. And I wanted to ask you about how important connection is to you. And also thank you for the connection you're having with our audience right now about the topic of psychosis. But in general, we know that connection is central to healing. Connection with other people is central to our healing. So what are the key relationships that supported you, the connections that really helped you achieve recovery?
Well, my wife was enormously important. Her quiet acceptance, whatever I needed to do to recover when I returned kind of a shell of a person after the stay in the ICU, was so helpful. She didn't push me. She helped our teenage kids understand what was happening. She was a buffer between me and things I couldn't handle, like driving and cooking. So I'm not sure I would have recovered the way I have without that kind of support in my life, as well as the emotional support. I don't mean to leave that out, but you know, her quiet willingness to just take up the slack in our partnership really helped a lot, and so I can't thank her enough. I also had a strong relationship with a therapist that I had worked with for quite some time, and a psychiatrist out in the community that I could rely on. She's been my psychiatrist now for about, 15 years. And
wow.
those were really important to me. But I was very isolated. I didn't have friends, and I was estranged for the most part from my family. And so I didn't have a lot of connections at the time to help me recover. I have a lot of connections now. I have a very good friend who also has bipolar disorder and who has an adult child with severe mental illness like we do. And because our oldest son has severe illness and is living in supported housing in San Francisco. And so she's just one of a whole group of friends. I have a small women's writing group that I work with every week that are all good friends now. And so now I live in a really rich and full web of connection. And I know that if I were to get sick again, I could call on those people for help.
Makes a real difference, don't you think, to have to know that you can reach out to people and know who they are, which I think is also an important thing to know. Now, here's what I've been dying to ask you. Tell us about your newsletter on Substack. It's called Disordered Chronicles, which is a fabulous title. And so, Patricia, what inspired you to write a newsletter, and what are you most eager to communicate to your audience?
Well, I started Disordered Chronicles because I wanted a place to write about things that were important to me, especially in the arena of serious mental illness. Breaking down the stigma and misconceptions people have about mental illness by talking openly about involuntary holds or medication refusal helps everyone. Individuals with serious mental illness, their family members who often feel incredibly isolated and judged, and really the community as a whole. I have the honor of working for NAMI Sacramento as the helpline coordinator, and I currently facilitate family support groups. So I talk to lots of people about these subjects every day. I also have the honor of sitting on our local mental health board and get to see behind the scenes of the county behavioral health department. So I've learned a lot over the past 3 years since I've been doing those things. And I'm really eager to share that knowledge with anyone who will sit still and listen. I'm hoping people will share their thoughts with me in turn about the things I write about and what is happening in their community to address the needs of those with serious behavioral health issues. I've really come to understand just how hard it is for family members to get help for their loved one when they have serious mental illness, and really feel the need to connect with people about those issues so they understand better how it plays out in people's lives.
Well, you're doing a great job. I've loved reading your posts so far, and I will continue to read and continue to share and get other people the important information and insight that you are putting out there. And that's the next thing I wanted to ask you, that I would love for you to continue to share this advice and insight with our listeners right now. I mean, given the power of the illness and the misconceptions about it that we've been addressing, what is the best advice or insight that you can give to someone coping with bipolar disorder? And also, what about to family, friends, and caregivers? That's a big question.
Well, I'll tell you what I've discovered, and that is that radical acceptance is the key to coming to grips with a bipolar diagnosis. It can be tough to live with bipolar disorder, but you have the power to make that easier by accepting that you have it, accepting that it's not the end of the world, and that by working closely with your care team when you're facing medication trials or changes, you can make it easier by being consistent with your sleep and your daily habits, forming a routine, and by making self-care a non-negotiable item on your to-do list. And you must find a way to stop or avoid using alcohol and drugs like weed. They'll provoke psychosis and episodes really fast and make it nearly impossible to get stable no matter what kinds of meds you take. So it can be hard to watch your peers, especially when you're younger, drink a lot or smoke casually at parties, but your body isn't like theirs, and you will pay a price for indulging that they will never be faced with. I think it's important for people to get a therapist that they can trust and with whom they can honestly confront issues like substance use or anger. And for natural supporters, which is usually how I talk about family members, because really in the life of a person with bipolar disorder, family includes, the people in your life who sometimes your coworkers, sometimes your friends in your kid's soccer club. It can include a lot of different people. So with your natural supporters, be patient. Ask them to be patient with you. It's helpful for a natural supporter to ask what help is wanted or needed instead of assuming that they know what you might want or need. And remember that bipolar episodes are traumatic in many ways, including damage to the brain that needs time to heal. Communication can often be strained after an episode or during an episode. I suggest to people that they learn about Javier Amador and his LEAP method of communicating, because it will enhance your ability to provide empathetic and structured support, especially around boundaries. And get a therapist of your own if you're a family member or a natural supporter. You probably need one too.
I think this illness, as with so many of them, can just be so difficult and if not downright destructive to relationships and, family and all those things. And it's good to hear that you have now just got a whole community out there for you, or various communities, it sounds like. This is always our final question. And Patricia, please tell us, what gives you hope for individuals battling bipolar disorder today?
Well, one of the big things that gives me hope is that there are medications available now that mean there is the real possibility of sustained stability, provided you also do the work to make and keep habits that will support the medications that are keeping you stable. I live with a medication-induced tremor, like I mentioned before, that has required me to make adjustments in my life, but the benefits of the meds far outweigh the losses. And while I hope you aren't confronted, that person out there with bipolar disorder, I hope you aren't confronted with that kind of issue. If you are, work closely with your doctor and don't stop trying medications and lifestyle tweaks until you've found something that works for you.
All right. Well, I unfortunately must reluctantly bring our topic to a close. I would rather talk to you for about another hour or so because I've learned so much. But Valerie and I want to extend our deepest respect and gratitude to you, Patricia, for sharing your incredible story with such eloquence and such generosity of spirit to give so much to our listeners and to us. And for your expression of hope for those fighting bipolar disorder, this hope that Valerie and I wholeheartedly share.
Absolutely.
And now, Valerie will guide us through a mindfulness exercise. Valerie?
Yes, I will. I always give a definition. What is mindfulness? Mindfulness is a mental state achieved by focusing one's awareness on the present moment while calmly acknowledging and accepting one's feelings, thoughts, and bodily sensations without judgment. And as I was thinking about today's mindfulness exercise, I got to thinking about telling our stories, as you, Patricia, just did, as well as other guests who have so generously shared their stories with us. And Helen, you and I talk so often about the power of connection, which we did again today, and about the importance of letting others into our lives. So today, let's mindfully identify a healthy connection we can make. Let's think about what is something we might want to share with another person, and who is a safe person to share it with. Let's try it. Let's get mindful. If you are driving or walking, please adapt this mindfulness exercise in such a way that it works in your current surroundings. If you can, find a comfortable seated position. Try closing your eyes if it's safe to do so. Let's settle in. As always, we'll begin with a few diaphragmatic breaths. Whether your eyes are open or closed, let's steady our breathing with 2 diaphragmatic breaths. When you do this on your own, take as many breaths as you need to become calm and centered. I usually take 10 diaphragmatic breaths to begin my mindfulness and meditation practice. Let's breathe. Inhale through your nose, expanding an imaginary balloon in your stomach as you inhale. Forcefully exhale through your mouth, pulling in your stomach as you do so. Drop your shoulders. Inhale through your nose, expanding that imaginary balloon. Exhale through your mouth. Pull your stomach all the way in. Keep this slow, steady breath going. Let your mind drift. Scan the last few days. Is there a thought pattern over the last few days? Something that has been on your mind? Have you been thinking about something it would be helpful to connect with another person about? Can you think of a friend or loved one with whom to safely share this? What would you like to say? Can you visualize this conversation? Or maybe there's a new connection you would like to make. Maybe a neighbor, a person you see frequently at the gym. Can you think of someone you'd like to make a new connection with? How would you strike up a conversation? you visualize this scene? In visualizing these moments of connections, breathe deeply. Feel the connection. Breathe. If your eyes are closed, please open them and gently bring yourself back to the room. Thank you for doing this mindfulness exercise with me.
Well, thank you, Valerie, for such peaceful moments. And I always appreciate them and always anticipate them. So I'm forever in your debt. This brings our episode to a close. It's been such a pleasure to talk with Patricia Wenzel, whose courage and resourcefulness are inspiring. And for me, the chance to learn through her eyes even more about an illness I've had for decades. And to our listeners, Valerie and I want to ask you for a big favor. We need your help to spread the word about our podcast. Please take the time to post a review on the platform of your choice or contact us through our website, mentalhealthhopeandrecovery.com. Your enthusiasm for our work will have great impact on our ability to reach more people, those needing knowledge and hope for recovery from mental illness. Now, in our coming episode, we'll tackle what many experts say is the most prevalent mental illness in the world today, anxiety. Please join us for a much-needed deep dive into anxiety, symptoms, impact, treatment. It's said we live in the age of anxiety, so don't miss this episode. And until then, I leave you with our favorite word, onward.
Doug. Limu and I always tell you to customize your car insurance and save hundreds with Liberty Mutual. But now, we want you to feel it. Cue the emu music, Limu.
Save yourself money today. Increase your wealth. Customize and save, we say.
That may have been too much feeling.
Only pay for what you need at libertymutual.com.
Liberty, 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 liberty.
Savings vary. Underwritten by Liberty Mutual Insurance Company and affiliates. Excludes Massachusetts.
Hey girl, this is a legging emergency. Ugh, my favorite Lululemon leggings, the ones you got me years ago. I think they were lined maybe? Well, I just got back from my trip and I think I left them at the B&B. Girl, I need to replace these. Could you send me the link to where you got them? I need a pair ASAP. Also, my birthday's coming up, so... Anyways, thanks girl, talk soon.
Looking for your newest go-tos? Lululemon What's New Gear drops on Tuesdays. Every Tuesday. Head to Lululemon.com to shop What's New Gear.